guys, welcome back to another YouTube video. Now, in today's video, guys, COVID is basically dead. I just got news of some of the guidelines that they made, and honestly, I don't care because I mean, COVID has pretty much been out of my mind for, like, pretty much over a year now. I mean, like, it's been dead to me for a while, but for the CDC, they finally basically just called it quits. First of all, just one quick thing that I want to say is I apologize I've not uploaded on this channel in a while. I've been more focused on my on my first channel, trying to get some things sorted out, and some big changes that I made there. So I apologize for that. But I finally decided, you know what, this news story kind of struck me, and I wanted to make a video on it because I think it's just hilarious that it took them this long to finally basically put the nail in the coffin and say, you know what, we're just going to leave it up to the individuals and we're just going to be like, we don't really care anymore. It's really up to you what you want to do. And this should have been the case from, I don't want to say day one, because, from day one, COVID was pretty unpredictable. None of us really knew what was going on. Especially, I think more people were actually scared before COVID-19 was actually announced as a global pandemic, than when it was announced. And then the weeks after, people realized this really isn't that bad. Why do we need all these guidelines? And then by the summertime, you could tell people pretty much did not care anymore. The media just became hypocritical about it with, all the riots and everybody gathering together, because I guess that doesn't matter, right? Even though we're in the midst of a global pandemic, we can still have people gather together and riot because it fits our narrative. And I think that was like the moment where not only did I realize that they're just straight up lying to us at this point, but COVID is pretty much irrelevant at this point. People are focused on the new issue, and people have really just moved on, and they are far moved on at this point from anything COVID related. I mean, we went from BLM, then we went to all of the transgenderism stuff, and into the abortion and all that kind of stuff. We are far, far, far from the day that everybody was concerned about COVID-19 and everything like that. But before I get into talking so much about it, here are the new guidelines that the CDC basically put up. I found an article from npr.org, and it says the new school year is underway, and so are new federal guidelines to curb the spread of COVID-19. By the way, this is an article that's like meant for, it's supposed to like inform teachers about these new guidelines and stuff like that, so that's why it's coming from like this certain perspective. Anyways, continuing, it says, quote, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention released updated recommendations on Thursday, largely loosening virus protocols and leaving much of the decision-making to individuals and local officials. The changes to the existing guidance are a reflection of the country's sweeping immunity. Around 95% of the population have some immunity due to a combination of vaccination and past infections, according to Greta Massetti, a senior epidemiologist at the CDC. We also have a better understanding of how to protect people from being exposed to the virus, says Massetti. This guidance acknowledges the pandemic is not over, but also helps us move to a point where COVID-19 no longer severely disrupts our daily lives. You see there, it's not completely over just yet, because it can never be completely over. We just have to keep milking it as long as possible. So it's not completely over, but hey, at least it doesn't disrupt your life anymore. Well, as much as you've tried to make it disrupt my life, it really hasn't disrupted my life for a while. I mean, probably since before I went back to school, the year where they canceled the last couple of months of school because of it. Because by then, I just completely did not really care. Sure, they were still making us wear masks and, do some of these procedures, but really at that point, I didn't really care at all. I was just kind of going with the guidelines that they made because they were forced on me. But at that point, I really didn't even care anymore. And then continuing, it says, quote, health measures will probably look different depending on the school district, but here are some things to know about best practices recommended by the CDC. Okay, so I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but these are basically the changes that they made, which are pretty much the major changes that have been recommended by the CDC for a while, but I don't think they've been enforced pretty well, because, I mean, at least where I live, it doesn't really seem like these rules were enforced well enough. I mean, I've heard a lot of people who got COVID, but they didn't even quarantine or, whatever. I mean, I'm pretty sure I got COVID at one point, and I didn't even really care. So it says universal indoor mask. Here's just basically the list of the changes. They still recommend universal indoor masking in nearly half the country. Routine testing is no longer recommended because they used to make you do that. You don't have to quarantine. You don't have to quarantine if you have COVID. And then I believe there were what to do if your student is sick. Students and staff members who experience symptoms like a cough, fever, or sore throats should head home and get tested immediately, the CDC said. For people who are at risk of getting severely ill from COVID-19, the agency recommends consulting their doctor. Those who test positive should isolate at home for at least 5 days. Afterward, isolation depends on whether they continue to exhibit symptoms. But basically, they still recommend this stuff, but basically it's not like enforced anymore. You don't have to quarantine. You don't have to get a test or whatever. Basically, it's just let loose. It's up to you what you want to do. And I don't like, at least where I live. I don't, obviously it's different where other places are, but at least where I live, it never was really enforced enough. Well, I mean, I don't think it should be enforced as much as the CDC recommended it, but it was never really enforced to the point where this was relevant at all. I mean, I've heard of tons of people who got COVID and they didn't even really care. They didn't get quarantined or whatever. It's just, yeah, COVID's been so irrelevant, and I don't really pay attention to the mainstream media enough to realize that they still care. They still want to milk this. They still are, constantly talking about the new guidelines that the CDC has, and they're still trying to make it relevant. But I look back and I see, some of these news articles that they're making, and I'm like, they still care about this issue? I mean, I am so far moved on at this point, and I look back and it just puts me in absolute shock. So yeah, basically, COVID is completely dead, even to the CDC at this point. You don't have to get quarantined. You don't have to quarantine. It's basically up to you at this point. And COVID has been dead to me, like I said, for a long time now. I mean, I wasn't one of those people who, shut themselves indoors for months after it was announced a global pandemic. I mean, I was out like after the first week. We went to Target just to see what it was like. Obviously, there was a lot of toilet paper that was gone and everything like that. But I apologize I had to cut there. But yeah, it's basically been dead for a while. I mean, I think even on the left and the right, despite some people still wearing masks for some reason, I don't even think it's because they're concerned about COVID. I think it's just because they don't want to freaking show their face. It's so stupid. But nobody cares anymore. And the fact that the CDC, the CDC is obviously gonna stick with this for as long as they can because when there's not a national virus, I mean, they're probably just bored in their offices, you know what I mean? And then for the media, obviously, they're going to try to milk this as long as possible and, keep this relevant because it's really all they have. I mean, there's, obviously because we're so far moved on, there's other stuff that they can talk about. Now you had the rating of Donald Trump's the Mar-a-Lago or whatever. So there's still stuff for them to talk about, but they also want COVID in the background in the case that they have nothing else to talk about. But at this point, nobody cares. Nobody has cared for over a year now, at least for me, and I feel like for a lot of people as well. And yeah, COVID it's just dead. I don't understand why they're still trying to milk it. And I think the CDC finally realized, you know what, there's nothing else we can do. Nobody's going to go along with these guidelines. Nobody has been going along with these guidelines since day one. And so we're just going to draw the line here and say, you know what, we're done. And the media though is never going to give up. The CDC may give up because they probably got bored of talking about this so much, but the media is never going to get up. They're going to continue to talk about this. They're going to continue to say, well, we still recommend this, and nobody cares. Nobody cares anymore. Everybody is so far moved on. There are so many other bigger issues out there that people are focused on and want to talk about. And COVID has just nobody cares anymore. Nobody wants to talk about it. It's irrelevant. And I think even for both sides, nobody wants it to be disrupting their lives anymore. They don't want these guidelines on them anymore. They don't want to have to be concerned about it. They don't want to wear the masks. They don't want to worry about it anymore. Many people, I haven't got the vaccine, but many people have got the vaccine and they've just moved on from there. Some of them have still gone by the recommendations and, they've gotten like 2 or 3 boosters, but most people have just moved on. They don't care anymore. And I just wanted to make this video because I saw this post, and I saw these news stories, and I was like, there are still people out there who want to make this relevant and still care about this issue. Or well, it's not even an issue anymore, but they still care about COVID-19. And it just really it amazes me, and it just emphasizes how much or how long they're willing to just milk these types of things. Yeah, that's basically all I wanted to talk about in the video. But otherwise, stay tuned for the future content. Hopefully, I can get to uploading a little bit more. I realize there are a lot of new things that have been coming out lately. Obviously, a couple days ago, we had the raid on the Mar-a-Lago, which I didn't get to talking to, and I'm probably not going to get to talking to, but I did mention it in this video for you guys, so you know that I wasn't just, staying away from that. But I wanted to post about this because I thought it was just so interesting that there are still people who care about it out there. But, yeah, hopefully I can get to uploading a little bit more. Other than that, like and subscribe, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.